Welcome back everybody to the second part of this video on Mr. Right in the What is Love series. Let's pick up where we left off right after question 6. Question 7. What are your expectations? In one line from the book it says the first step is to realize you have some expectations that you probably don't even know are present. This is a complicated topic, but I'm going to read an excerpt from their book that I think does a good job. It's from an email that Clayton King had received from a young woman who had listened to one of his sermons. And she writes, "Recently I listened to one of your sermons online about dating, and after listening I knew I should just walk away from my relationship with my boyfriend. I have been dating this guy for a year. He will go to church with me and says he believes in God, but he also parties on the weekend and has extreme anger management issues. I love him and breaking up would be the hardest thing ever. But beyond loving him, there's a deeper issue that I won't tell anyone. I am crippled by the fear of being alone. I'm a senior in college now, and all I can think about is how I always thought I would leave college engaged or married. In the last 8 years, I have only been single for 9 months. I'm scared of seeing the word single on my Facebook profile, even more than I am of losing my boyfriend. In my mind, my identity is in being with someone. It's easy for people to tell me to find your identity in Christ, but that is so much easier said than done. I have tried. I cried out to God to fix this problem. I got involved in Bible studies, went on retreats, and I would like to say God miraculously came through, but he didn't. I ended up back with my boyfriend, and I told myself that I needed to give up on trying to come closer to God because I was just too far gone for him to show up in my life. In your sermon, you talked about people who have guilt piled on top of sin, piled on top of guilt. I have 7 years of that. Not one of my relationships in 7 years has been pleasing to God. Last night I saw my boyfriend and I was crying in the fetal position and he was screaming. That is my relationship at this point. Every day is hard, but in my heart I would rather be married and miserable than single and alone. I know that sounds foolish, but I believe it. I think God is just fed up with all my sins for the past 7 years and me promising him I will try to change with no results. So he has given up on me. It says I am like the little girl who cried wolf. If I don't get help now, I know that I am on a road to a miserable life." Then Clayton King kind of explains how this email actually points out a lot of expectations that perhaps she didn't realize she had, but he delineates them as this. She expects the relationship to give her an identity. She expects her boyfriend to make her feel happy and loved. She expects other people to think less of her if her Facebook status changes to single. She expects this relationship to satisfy her need to belong to someone and to feel special and cherished. She expects to be engaged or married by the time she finishes college. She expects that being married and miserable will be better than being single. She expects a boy to complete her and bring her contentment. This excerpt from the book illustrates the impact of expectations, recognized or unrecognized, on relationships. When we recognize our expectations, we can make decisions based on healthy expectations. When we don't recognize them, we may make decisions that lead to unhealthy relationships and decisions that may not line up with our values. Question number 8. Are you ready to marry an entire family? I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. We've already covered it a bit, and also y'all aren't that close to tying the knot, right? Anyway, I do want you to understand why it's important though. So, best case scenario, y'all have a great relationship, you have a good relationship with each other's parents, the parents show both of you love and have a positive influence on both of you, and they raised y'all to become successful, independent adults who are ready to break away from the control of their parents and start their own lives. However, they are still in your lives and those relationships do still matter. Now, how about the not best case scenario? The one where you don't get along with your parents, or maybe that other person doesn't, and one of you has chosen to never see their parents again. Do you still marry the family? Yeah, actually you do. Yes, you can break away from them, but even in this scenario, those early childhood experiences will influence choices that are made in the marriage. For this reason, God's intention when He designed the different ways we feel love was that the familial love would introduce us in our early lives to what healthy love looks like. And it would teach us appropriate boundaries around intimacy and trust. When families mess this up, it can impact our self-love, which impacts how we love others. Fortunately, our God is all about turning bad situations into good for our sake, but it does usually require a lot of prayer and study and a lot of introspection. Question number 9. Are you ready to submit? Been there, talked about that. Refer back to the 3 lessons that we did previously and the videos that go along with them. Question 10. Will you give respect? This is something all of you should be mindful of already. It's really part of being a Christian. My guess is you all feel like you're pretty good on this one. However, there's one area that a lot of girls and guys are showing a lot of disrespect to each other in. And so I've printed out an article from Psychology Today, and I want you guys to discuss it in small group. And I think that through the article and through the discussion, you'll see that there's some very common behavior that really is disrespectful to each other. Question 11. Are you ready to love? I think this is where people get confused and where the 8 different types of love come into play. God created this process of how we learn to love well by creating all these different ways in which we experience love. When we rush too quickly into trying to find that forever someone and rush too quickly into a physical relationship, we shortcut God's plan. The love required for marriage as God defined it in Genesis 2:24 takes serious commitment, sacrifice, patience, communication, etc. The list goes on. It takes maturity for it to be done well. When it is done well, it is a glimpse into the oneness we will one day feel with God. Did I mention it takes sacrifice? And when I mention sacrifice, I don't mean the kind of sacrifice where you feel better about yourself because you're giving so much of yourself to someone else. I'm talking about understanding yourself enough so that you don't lose yourself when you have to make sacrifices for the sake of your partner. Question 10. Are you ready to get naked? Well, let's be clear. God does not want you to have sex before marriage. And it's not because He's some mean old grandpa type, but it's because, 1, He knows the heartache it can bring when the relationship ends. 2, He knows how it will impact your future marriage. 3, He designed it to be a beautiful, special gift shared between husband and wife, which is meant to strengthen the bond between the 2 of them. Number 4, He also knows that when love hasn't had time to build in the other ways we experience love, it complicates matters and can cause confusion as to how you actually feel about that other person. It's time to break up into small group and discuss all this further. This is the last video of this series. I hope you guys have learned a lot. And if it's just brought up more questions for you, then I really hope that you'll seek out me or Mr. Mike or Miss Marie or whatever adult that you trust with these kind of topics. Seek us out, ask us those questions, and next week we're actually going to have a whole session just on y'all's questions. All right, bye guys.